I have a firm belief that if the people understand the truth, then they'll make the right decision. There have been a number of arguments advanced by the other side on this immigration/illegal alien debate that are misleading at best. And I'm going to touch on a couple of them with your permission. First and foremost, there is the argument advanced that our economy is going to do better, and hence Americans will do better. Half of that is right. Bear in mind that the Senate Gang of Eight bill legalizes, at a minimum, 11 million illegal aliens who are now present in the United States of America. Also bear in mind that over the next decade, according to the Department of Homeland Security report, the Senate Gang of Eight bill will bring into America lawfully roughly 33 million foreigners who are not here presently. Now put those numbers together. 11 million legalized plus 33 million coming in lawfully, and that totals 44 million lawful workers added to the American workforce. That is out of 144 million total number of people who are employed in the United States economy, according to the June last month of 2013 Bureau of Labor statistics. If you look at these numbers, you bring in 44 million people, of course America's gross national product and gross domestic product are going to increase. But the misleading part of it is this: that does not necessarily translate into a higher standard of living for Americans and foreigners who are lawfully in America. And let me explain. The key is not total GNP or GDP for our country. The key is total GNP and GDP per capita. If our gross domestic product goes up a little bit, but the population goes up a great amount, then we individually, American families individually, are now living under lower economic conditions. Stated differently, our standard of living has declined. And in that vein, rather than just making an argument, I want to share some data that buttresses that argument. The Congressional Budget Office, which has been rather kind in my judgment to its evaluation of the Senate Gang of Eight legislation, issued a report called, quote, "The Economic Impact of S-744," end quote. This report was issued just last month in June of 2013. I'm going to quote, for the record, parts of that report. Quote, "S-744 would lower per capita gross national product by 0.7% in 2023. So over the next 10-year period of time, rather than our GDP growing or GNP growing per capita and America doing better individually, it declines under this bill. It's not just stagnant, the kind of stagnation that we have suffered for the last 5 or 6 years or so. There is a decline in GNP per capita, which means that the amount of money each American household has to spend to take care of their daily needs goes down because of the Senate Gang of Eight bill, because it is both legalizing and admitting into our country a total of 44 million foreigners who are going to be seeking jobs that Americans already have or that Americans won't. Further in the report, quote, "Average wages for the entire labor force would be 0.1% lower in 2023, end quote, because of Senate Bill 744. By 2016, just 3 years from now, that would be 0.4% lower, where our wages again are going down. Also notably, in another admission, Senate Bill 744 will, quote, "slightly raise the unemployment rate through 2020, end quote." So not only do we have a suppression because of this amnesty, because of this open borders nature of the Senate Gang of Eight bill, of individual incomes, we also have more Americans who are unemployed, according to the Congressional Budget Office. Now, I think that their numbers, quite frankly, are rather kind to the Gang of Eight bill. I think that it's going to be much worse. In that vein, let me share with you some other data points. According to the Heritage Foundation report that was issued a few months ago, quote, unlawful immigration appears to depress the wages of low-skilled U.S.-born and lawful immigrant workers by 10%, or $2,300 per year. Unlawful immigration also drives many of our most vulnerable U.S.-born workers out of the labor force entirely, end quote. That's a big number. A drop in wages of $2,300 per year for low-skill American-born and lawful immigrant workers. Now, here's another study. A 2009 study by the Pew Hispanic Center concluded that there were 7.8 million illegal aliens who are holding jobs in America. Okay? Stated differently, that's 7.8 million job opportunities that Americans have lost. Why? Well, quite frankly, because illegal aliens are often willing to work under the table, get paid under the table, because illegal aliens are often willing to work for less than Americans are, quite frankly, because illegal aliens are often willing to look the other way with respect to the worker safety laws that we have imposed in order to protect our American workers from bodily harm. 7.8 million job opportunities lost. The Federation of Americans for Immigration Reform thinks that number is low. They have it at 8.5 million job opportunities lost to American citizens, and that's today before the Gang of Eight bill gets implemented. Harvard professor George Borjas found in a study released in April of 2013, again just a few months ago, quote, illegal immigration reduces the wage of native workers by an estimated $99 to $118 billion a year. Let me read that again. Illegal immigration reduces the wage of native workers by an estimated $99 to $118 billion a year and generates a gain for businesses and other users of immigrants of $107 to $128 billion per year. Is it any wonder the United States Chamber of Commerce is spending millions of dollars to try to induce America to go with the Gang of Eight bill that will legalize 11 million foreigners and add another 33 million foreigners over the next decade? They see profits coming from this increase in the size of the workforce, which in turn will decrease the wages that they pay not only to illegal aliens, but also to lawful immigrants and also to American citizens. So that's where the United States Chamber of Commerce is coming from. They certainly have a financial interest. Now, I want to emphasize something. We should not be debating bringing in these mass numbers of foreigners into the American workforce in this kind of context. America currently suffers a 7.6% unemployment rate. Asian Americans suffer a 5% unemployment rate. White Americans suffer a 6.6% unemployment rate. Even worse, Hispanic Americans suffer a 9.1% unemployment rate. Even worse, African Americans suffer a 13.7% unemployment rate. And even worse, American teenagers suffer a 24% unemployment rate. Does it make sense to anybody that when we have unemployment in so many different segments of our economy so high, that we should legalize another 11 million workers and bring in an additional 33 million workers over the next decade to compete for jobs when Americans are having such a difficult time in this economy, not only getting jobs, but getting quality jobs? That having been said, Mr. Speaker, I would submit that it is a myth that the economy is going to become better because of this large importation and legalization of immigrants. Sure, America's GDP will go up, but that's not the issue. The issue is whether the quality of life for individual Americans goes up. And under this legislation, virtually every study I have seen, in fact, says that it goes down. That's one of the reasons why we have to stop this. Now, I've got one other myth that I would like to talk about. The whole premise of this immigration law debate is that the laws need dramatic changing. They aren't working. I would submit that that's not the case at all. The problem is not so much with our immigration laws. Sure, there's some tweaking that can be done in order to make sure that we admit into our country those individuals who have particular skill sets or educational levels or wealth that will enhance our economy. Sure, we can do that kind of tweaking. But it's a myth to say that we have 11 million illegal aliens in America because of our laws. That's not the case at all. We have 11 million illegal aliens in America, quite frankly, because the White House, the executive branch of our government, has refused, absolutely refused to enforce the laws that are on the books. And I'm not talking about just this administration. I'm talking about 20 years of neglect by the White House and the executive branch. Let me share some numbers with you in that point, and then I'll defer back to my good colleague, Mr. Gohmert. In 2011, the number of Border Patrol returns plus illegal aliens deported by court order was 715,495 individuals. That's an important point to note, okay? You've heard the myth that this administration deports more than any administration in history, or words to that effect. Well, that's kind of true, but it's misleading because that's only half of the number that you need to look at. It's not just the deportations by order that you look at. It is also how many times has our Border Patrol caught individuals and returned them. So in 2011, we have roughly 715,000 Border Patrol returns plus deported by court order. Let's go back to 2008, the last president before the current president. During that year, you put those two numbers together, and it was 1.1 million that the Border Patrol returned plus deported by court order. That's a big number. 64% more returned than in 2011, the most recent year for which I have information. A decade ago, it was again 1.1 million. Border Patrol returns plus deported by court order, 62% more than this administration in 2011. In 1993, 1,285,952 illegal aliens were returned pursuant to Border Patrol returns or deported by court order, 80% more than in 2011. And in 1983, it was 950,000, 33% more than 2011. In 1973, 4 decades ago, it was 585,000, and in 1963, it was 77,000 Border Patrol returns plus deported by court order. And I want to note something about the gap between 1963 and 1973. You'll remember these welfare programs that got passed as a part of the Great Society program, where America started paying foreigners to come into our country, where they start accessing welfare benefits. I would submit that that is a huge incentive for why these individuals have come to America who previously would not have come here under illegal terms. But because we've got laws in place that pay and incentivize illegals to come here, that is in fact a major reason why they are here. But nonetheless, the myth that the laws are the problem is not it. It's a lack of enforcement of the laws on hand. And the myth that this administration has been really, really good at returning illegals, that's true only if you look at half of the problem. If you look at the whole problem, then quite frankly, this administration in 2011 was doing far worse than previous administrations have done, or as has been done in 2003, 1 decade ago, 2 decades ago, 3 decades ago, and 4 decades ago.